and thank you for tuning in to your wreath tutorial. Hopefully you should have all got your wreath kits through the post or come and collected them and have opened to see all the delights that are there waiting for you. So today I'm going to show you how to put your wreath together. I did make a list of instructions that should be included in your kit. That should help, but is fairly basic, so please continue watching this and it should give you some really good tips to make sure you get the best wreath possible for your door. So inside your box you should have a lovely mossed ring like this. This started as a metal hoop that I have covered with moss for you with wire, so it's quite tight. This as well should be quite damp. If it's dried out a bit, that's fine. You can spray it with a little bit of water. That will keep that nice and damp for you, and it will just mean that all the foliage that you attach to it will have a slight water source and help keep everything fresher for a little bit longer. So you've got your little ring here. If you're wanting to hang your wreath from string over your door, which is what I do, I have a hook on the inside of my door, which then loops all the way over the top of the door, and the wreath hangs like that. You can attach twine at this point. I have included some twine into your kit as well, so you can use that at this point, but please make sure you save plenty for other bits and pieces. Bear with me. Scissors, that'd be good. So just get a decent length of twine like that, double it over, and then you can basically just make a loop. So bring it through and pull it through like that, and then pull it nice and tight. So it's nice and tight and secure on there. That then means you've got it hanging like that, and you can hang that then on your door. If you prefer to use like the metal hooks over your door and you're just going to place it on, then you obviously won't need that, so that's up to you on how you want to hang your wreath. These moss wreaths are slightly different. Some people make wreaths with floral foam, but I prefer to use the wire rings covered in moss, as these are a lot more eco-friendly. Floral foam is terrible for the environment, and when you soak it in water releases microplastics. So I try not to use that if possible. These are much better for the environment. And then at the end, when you're done with your wreath, you can keep this. You can take all the moss off and leave it. You've got your ring there that you can use then for next year's Christmas wreath or spring wreath or summer wreath or any other wreath. So yeah, so we use it like that with the moss on. So we've got it ready to hang that way, so we know that that is the top of your wreath. So in your box, you should have lots of mixed foliage. Now, the best thing to do is to sort it all out first. I hope that you will have gone through and put some of it in water if you possibly can, if you weren't going to make your wreath straight away. That's quite important, particularly eucalyptus. If you can, as soon as you get it, just trim the ends off, get it in some water. It just makes everything fresher for longer. Once it's on your wreath, it will start to dry out. It won't go brown, but it should just dry out nicely. But obviously you want to keep it as fresh as you can for as long as you can. So as soon as you receive it, trim an inch off the bottom of your stems if you can, at 45-degree angle. Get that in some water and then let it have a really good drink. So when you're ready, you can get all your foliage out, lay it out on your table and have a good look at what you've got. So I've tried to give you a really good mix, just because I personally think that with your wreath, if you've got a good mixture of different textures and colours, it just adds a nice fuller wreath with a lot more interest on it, really. So I've added a few different things. So you may have some big bits, some small bits. It is a bit of a mixture, but what you need to do is to start trimming bits down into usable pieces. Obviously nobody wants a massive piece of spruce on your wreath like that, because it looks rather silly. So we need to trim them all down, and the main aim is to make small bunches that you can then attach to your wreath. So if you've got a large stem like this, have a think about all the little bits that you can use. So what I would do is, this is a nice little bit, cut that piece off, that piece like that, that piece, and then what I will do is I'll make space in front of me. You can't see that too well on here, but those up there. These long bits are good. Try and use as much as you can of these stems. Even these smaller bits can still be used. So I'm going to cut them all off like that. There we go. Like that. That can now go in the bin. That's fine. So you've got lots of pieces. I'm going to use a little piece of parvifolia here, like that. What I will do as well, and I explained to you, is when you make your bunches, you need to strip the bottom few leaves off the bottom, because when you bind it, you're binding it with wire. You need it to be nice and tight, and once the leaves start to decay a little bit underneath that wire, it will become loose and then fall out. So as much as you can. So for these bigger pieces like this, I would just rip off probably that much, about 1 inch of the needles or leaves, just to leave your bare stem there. It just helps make it a lot more secure. So get rid of that. So you're wanting to make some small bunches that you can attach on. These bunches, the kind of each stems in your bunch, probably I would say 5 or 6 inches is a really good size. The bigger your bunch is, the bigger your wreath is going to be, but you do need to be aware of making sure that you don't run out of produce before you get to the other side. And also, sometimes if you use really large pieces, let me just show you an example. If I say we're going to use all the same, like this. If you use all really large pieces to add to your wreath, you might, as you go round, end up losing the centre of your circle. You want to make sure that they're not super, super big, but also not super, super small. So around about 5 or 6 inches is around about right. Some bunches can be smaller, which is really handy for your inside line. Some slightly bigger, but kind of just as a ballpark, that kind of size. So I'm going to, I've stripped them. I'm going to strip that. A nice handy bin next to you is always good because it's really messy work. So I have got a couple of bits of those, some eucalyptus, and got some ivy as well for you here. The ivy is really lovely just to add a little bit of interest, because the leaves aren't always that big, but it's got lovely berries on at this time of year, which I always think is quite nice to add into your wreath. Sometimes when I use red berries, they tend to just rot and go off and look not very good after a few weeks, but these tend to last really well and look really nice. So there I have my first bunch. So you don't need to tie each bunch, but I do find it is slightly easier to tie your bunches before you start on your wreath. It just makes everything a little bit tidier and easier for you to manage. So just cut off a small amount of string, wrap it around, whoops, and then tie it up into a knot. Oh, if I can get it. There we go. Oops. There we go there. So I've got a nice little bunch there. So I have found that to fill a wreath, roughly, I use around about 18 bunches, say. But it depends again on the size of your bunches and how well you're spreading them out around your wreath. So that's a rough ballpark. So what I would do to start is to go through all your foliage, make some bunches up around about that kind of number, if you can get that many. Some smaller, some larger, and lay them all out on your workspace. That will make it really nice and clear exactly what you've got. So I'm going to put my bunch there, and actually I'm going to move these out of the way because this is in true Blue Peter style. I have some that I prepared earlier. So let me find them out. So here we go, look. I've got some larger ones like this here. That one's even bigger. That kind of look. So they don't need to be the neatest of things, just a good mixture of foliage in each one. There we go. This one's a little bit smaller look, a little bit longer but a bit thinner. So it just, you can then choose which one you need to get the shape of your wreath as you go around. If you've got some that are different shapes and sizes, it just helps. So, let's get all mine out. There we go. So, right, I'm just going to, before I start, I'm going to clear all this off because, as you can see, it makes a lot of mess. So, I'll clear that off and then we're ready to go. There we go. Right, so if you get your ring, what I would do is start at the top where you've put your string, if you have a string. If not, then obviously you can choose where you want to start. It makes no difference. You've also got a reel of wire in your box. So if you can find the end of your wire, and leave that to the side for a moment. Choose yourself a bunch to start with. So I'm going to use a decent sized bunch to start with and lay it onto your wreath. I tend to lay at a slight angle, so just to give you a splaying out effect. So let me show you what I mean. So instead of just laying like that, which you can do, it doesn't look bad, I tend to just give it a slight angle, and that's going to be the sort of size that you're getting all the way around. So that's the angle I want to put that at. So I'm going to put that in place. And then I'm going to get the end of my wire, leave it all, it's going to stay attached to the reel the whole time. Get the end and tuck it in to the back of my moss ring so that there's no spiky edges. And then pull it round, and you're going to go around the stems where you've removed all your leaves and bits of needles. So you're going to go over that area, go over it once, pull it all the way around, go through again, and all the way around again. And so you need to do that possibly 2 or 3 times to make sure that it's really secure. Make sure that you're pulling really nice and tight so that that's really nice and secure, because again, as things start to dry out, everything does slightly start to shrink, and so you can get things slip out if it's not really tight. So there we go. So I've got my first piece secured like that. Move my string out of the way. So I've got my first piece. Now, what I would do also is once you've got your first piece on, you've got all your bunches all laid out in front of you. Just to make sure that you have got enough to go all the way around, is lay out just roughly where you might want the rest of your pieces to go. So I'm just going to lay that on top, so you're covering up where you've binded. So I'm going to lay that on top of there like that. That's covering it up, but moving obviously your stem down, so you're working your way around. You don't need to just lay it straight on top, it needs to be staggered. So we're going to lay that there, lay the next one on the top. You can lay them at different angles, so you might lay one facing slightly out, you might lay one facing slightly inward, but the aim is to make sure that you cannot see any of this moss wreath. So you can add it slightly in, and then you can have one slightly out, okay? So, but at this stage, it's just to make sure that your kind of sizing of your bunches is kind of the way you want it to be, and to make sure that you've got enough to get all the way round, because obviously you don't want to get halfway, have bunched up all your bunches really, really nice and tight and have massive bunches, and then you've not got any foliage to get round. So you need a nice even distribution. So I'm just going to roughly, because obviously they're not going to stay like this, this is just to roughly gauge how much I have got. So I'm going to put that one there, like that. So I think I have got 18 bunches, I think, here. So there we go, that one's going to go there. A nice big one to go there. There we go, look. So it's working its way around. And then the last few will tuck right under you first, like that. So there we go. So that is the rough idea, you can see from there, of how you want it to look once it's all done. Obviously, you've only got your first piece wired in at the moment, so we need to take it all back off, but at least I know now that I've bunched mine in a good size. In fact, I have got some spares actually in there, and that I can get myself all the way around. If you can have a few spare bunches as well, that's always handy, because as you start wiring around, you might find, oh, I've got a little gap there on the inside, I need just a small bunch. So some spare bits is always really, really handy as you're going around, just in case you need it. So I'm going to take them all back off again. And so we'll go back to our first piece that is wound on. Let me just, don't let your wire as well, a little handy tip, is don't let your wire unravel itself too much like that. It makes it a lot more difficult, so I'll turn it around, it makes it a lot more difficult to get that good tension in your wire. So I would recommend just keeping it like that kind of length all the time, so you can literally just keep winding round like that. You can keep it nice and tight. So, whoops. What I will do now is then gather my next bunch, and I'm going to overlay onto my last one. So make sure, as I said before, that you're staggering it down. If you lay it on the top like that, it's going to be really lovely and thick, but as I say, you're not going to work your way around the wreath quick enough. So all you need to do is just to lay it in front of the last one, to cover up what you've just tied down. So those stems there need to be covered up like that. Some people, I did notice last year at the workshops, were trying to lay their bunches or lay their foliage underneath the first one, like that. But that is just going to be so difficult, and you'll end up trapping all your pieces with your wire. So what you're trying to do is to lay over the top. So you're always laying over the top of your last piece, which is why you don't need to cut your wire at all. So your wire will stay attached to your wreath until you get right to the end, and then you can cut it off and tuck it in. So what we'll do is lay that on top of your last one, cover up the binding and your stems, and I like that positioning. It's a slight angle again, but it's nice and covered. And then I'm going to go round once, twice, pull it tight as I go, and 3 times like that. So I've got 2 pieces, and then I'm just going to mess around, choose another. I'm going to choose a little piece there just to go on the inside, just because I've got lots coming outwards here. This one I'm going to choose to go inwards. Just bear in mind as you're going, bear in mind your shape. So you might not want a really big, thick, massive wreath. You may. If you do want a bigger wreath, then you obviously need to make sure that you've got a nice angle coming out. But obviously, if you don't, then your angle will be less. So you would have, let me show you. So you would keep it to the shape of your circle. If you're wanting something bigger, you can get it more of an angle. Just always bear in mind your inside line. So you want that to be covered. You don't want to be able to see your moss on the inside, but on the same note, you don't want to lose your inner circle, or else it no longer looks like a wreath. So, okay, let's find another piece. This is a massive, massive bunch I've done here. So I'm going to move it right down, because if I don't move it down, I'm going to end up with a big sticky outy bit, and it's going to lose that circular shape. So if you keep moving it round, keep looking from above, or even lifting it up and looking at it like that to make sure you are following that nice round shape, and that will keep it really nice and round, and that's what you want. So There we go. I'm going to tie that 3 times. Make sure you're keeping it nice and tight. There we go. Right, so that's got a really nice thick texture. So I'm going to get a nice piece that I've got with some eucalyptus in. That just smells amazing as well, so I like to put plenty of that in. So that's just going to go right over the top again, like that. And I'm going to keep going around. Some of your stems, if when you've wired them on, I've got big long woody stems there, look. Sometimes if they're too long, I will just take my scissors or secateurs and just snip them a little bit shorter. It just means that then when it comes to adding on the fruit and cones and stuff and you're trying to stick wires through it, you've got less of a barrier trying to get through. If you've got it absolutely covered with all your stems, it's going to be really difficult to get your wires through. So let's find another one. We just basically just keep going round, keeping that nice shape. In fact, I'm going to get a small piece there, I think, in a moment. So, but you see, once you've got all your bunches made and you start working on with these, it really doesn't take too long. There we go. Just think about the shape as you go. I might use some of my oddments that I've got left to cover that piece, so just bear with me. I'm going to add just a small piece like that. So you can do that as well if you've got odd little pieces that just fit in those little gaps that you've got in the inside, that sometimes you get. You can just add one piece at a time, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I generally make a lot of my bespoke wreaths using singular pieces of foliage just because I like them to really think about the placement. So you can use the bunches or the single bits, that's absolutely fine. So that one, look, I've got a piece here that curves. These bits that have the long needles, they tend to curve slightly, which I really like because your wreath needs to follow the same direction all the way around. You really need to get that flow and it gives you that really nice spiral shape. So with this being curved, it really lends itself to be going like that around the outside to follow that really nice curve all the way around. So I could obviously leave it like that, but I just think keeping that curve there would be really great, but I've obviously got this bit to fill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that piece. I'm going to put that piece there in the middle to cover up those stems that I made before, and then 3 times around, and then this nice curved bit I'm going to tuck into this gap so that I've not got any dead space there, like that, like that as we go. So, and as you're working round your wreath, turn it as you go. That makes it a lot easier to keep looking at the shape of it and making sure that your stems are always following the direction that you want them to go. So I always work in a clockwise way, but if, I don't know, I'm left-handed, but actually, I don't know, I always go clockwise. You may find it easier to go anti-clockwise, but as long as all your pieces are following that direction all the time, so I'm going clockwise, but all my pieces are facing anti-clockwise or left, so they're all following the same line. Do you see what I mean? So they should all be laid that way, and you should be able to see that kind of direction in all the placements. So, I'm going to keep going, just bear with me. Here again, look, I've got some really long woody stems. I'm going to trim those off. So it is a really good idea as well that once that you keep some spare foliage for extras, because I laid all mine out before, but obviously then have bunched mine up a little bit too much. So I've only got a couple of bunches left, and I've still got a little bit of space here, so I may have to make a couple of extras up if I can't make it fill it out enough. So. I am nearly back at the top now, so we're nearly there. Oops. And make sure as well, when you get to this point where you're nearly at the beginning again, that you're not trapping all this foliage that you put down first, or else you end up with it all really flat there. So, so I am going to have to make up an extra couple of bunches, I think, just to make sure that I can complete that space, because you want that to be full all the way around. Nice little. So that one's a bit long, look, you don't want a massive long bit of woody stem. Just do that. And like I say, you don't have to tie them. So for this bit, for example, I'm laying a tied little bunch down and just a singular piece at once. But just make sure that you're tying it really nice and tight so that it doesn't slip out, because that's the last thing you want if you have a windy day and end up with a few pieces of foliage on the floor outside your front door. So there we go, so I'm nearly there. Right, but I did just misjudge a little bit, so I'll use some more of this ivy, because I love this. It really does give, I've not used it too much in the rest of the bunches for some reason, I don't know why. But, so just for quickness, I'm not going to tie these, I'm just going to place them in. But this bit does get really fiddly, unfortunately, you know, because of once you're trying to tuck it in underneath your starter pieces, it does get very fiddly, because you don't want a gap, so you do need to get it tucked in really nice and tight. Get it right up there. Just use your fingers to move everything out of the way. Sometimes you need an extra pair of hands if you've got some available, someone willing to just give you an extra pair while you're finishing off those last little pieces. So let me just get 2 extra bits. Let me get those, bear with me. There we go. You can't see the massive pile of foliage that I've got on the floor. I've just tossed that onto the pile. That'll be fine. My kitchen looks nice and tidy from this angle, but isn't. There we go. And a little bit of that as well. A smaller piece. That's a small piece. See, even these small pieces are really good to use. So I try and use as much of it as you can. It does, then it's not wasted. So I'm going to put those there. I'm going to get some eucalyptus to finish off, I think, just to fill that nice little gap. Bear with me. There we go. Got a couple of little sprigs here. With the eucalyptus, sometimes in your box you may have a really big long piece, which they're good because you can use multiple pieces. So for example, if I just wanted to use this top little piece, I can cut that right on top of the next set of leaves. So if I cut that just there, that still looks like a really nice piece to use. And I've got that one as well. So please try and, like I said, try and use as much of it as you can. And the thing is, eucalyptus in a wreath is so gorgeous because it adds that really nice icy green highlight to your wreath, and it smells amazing. Just one more piece, just so that I can make it look really nice and full for you. So it is, like I said before, it is really useful to make sure you've got those leftover little bits. Oh, I had some there. I will use that as well. Cut that nice and short. In fact, I don't want it that long. I'm going to cut that kind of length. It's a good length. And tuck it right underneath. Okay, I think this will be my last bit, I think. This will just work out. So I'm lifting my other pieces to try and get my wire through without trapping them. So once time round, whoops, let's obviously missed that. See what I mean? It's really fiddly trying to get those last pieces in. So I'm just going to place that in there. There we go. Right. And then have a good look at it. Pick it up with your string. Have a good look and just check that you've got your shape right. I've got a little bit out there, but that's okay. I've got a nice, really full wreath there. Now I actually really like them just as a foliage wreath. I think that looks gorgeous and it smells amazing. But yeah, so I've still got my wire attached. Look, if you turn it round, you can see the wire's still attached. So what I will do, I just put it down there. Just cut my wire like that and then bend it and tuck it back in to your moss ring and make sure that there's no spiky bits. So that's not very nice, poking your finger with those. So there we go, there is my foliage wreath with a good mixture of foliage. I love all the shape. So what I will do now is, before we start all the fruit and cones, I'm just going to put those down there. and then there we go, and then you can actually see what I'm doing rather than just having a table covered in bits of tree. There we go. So we've got our wreath. I can probably sit on there as well. So have a little think now about what you want to add to it. Obviously you don't have to add everything. I do really like these just plain foliage ones. I think they look really nice, quite contemporary. If you want something more traditional, if you want the cones and the fruit, I've added some in the packs for you. So first of all, what I would suggest doing is getting it all out and working out where you might want it before you start wiring stuff in. So I'm going to put mine the right way up. Well, I'll say it so that you can see it there. So if I want some cones in mine, I'm just going to lay them out nicely, roughly to where I might want them. So I would usually, if I'm going to use 3, which is my usual number because I think 4 looks a bit square, I would make sure that they are not, if you're thinking about a clock face, not at 12 o'clock, not at 1/4 to, or 1/2. I always think that just doesn't look aesthetically right. So if you're going to go 5 to, 10 past, 25 to, something like that, to make a kind of triangle like that, you could have a little cluster together. So if I was going to hold mine up like that, you can see that nicely. Have a little cluster of 3 and make a focal point, probably at around about 20 past, if that's 20 past there, yeah, like that, if that's what you wanted. But yeah, so just have a play around. This is a good point now where you've got your wreath made. Also, if there's any sections on there that are slightly flatter, if you've got some space that you think, oh, it needs something, then you can work out where you want to put them and fill those spaces nicely. So I'm going to put mine, I think, tuck them in like that. Like that. I don't know if you can see from there. So, there we go. So I put those on. Your fruit, these I tend to lay on in pairs really, just because I think when you lay them out, they sit nicely like that and it just looks a bit better. Alternatively, you could lay them flat as a flat piece of fruit on top, but I tend to think it looks better if you get a pair like that, either a big piece and a small piece or whatever. They're all different sizes, so I've just kind of given you a mixture to just slide them into extra gaps. So I maybe, because I've got my cones in, wire them in like that, say, or the next lot I might then put there, and rather than on the top and flattening down the rest of your foliage, I just stick them into open spaces really between bits of foliage that looks like they're just poking out rather than just trying to flatten it all down. So I'm going to do 3 of them as well so that it kind of looks quite equal. So like that. So I've roughly laid out where I want my bits. I could, oh, I don't know, maybe I want some more, I don't know. I will see. We also have cinnamon as well, which I will show you. For some reason I haven't got it out. But I've laid out what I want, and I'll show you now how to wire them. So in your packs you should have a number of these. These are called stub wires. Florists use them for loads of different things, buttonholes and things like that. But they're really useful. So I will show you how to wire a cone. I have explained this on the instruction sheet, but I think sometimes you just need to see it really to be able to get a better idea, because it's hard to read something and work out what I mean, I think. And then the sun's come out and given me like this big reflection on my forehead. Ah. So what I'm going to show you, so you've got your pine cone and you take 1 piece of wire. With your wire, put that down, you just need to make a small hook, that kind of size. Okay? It's kind of the size of your fingernail, little fingernail or something. So then take your pine cone, I'm just going to move that out of the way. Take your pine cone and hook that little hook onto one of these little petals. So I would use one of the lowest ones you can get and get it on nicely. I'm going to hook it on and push it in as far as you can. So you can see there, I don't know, I've hooked it in and pulled it in, and it's now threaded inside. So now I want this piece of wire to move right down as central as I can. It doesn't matter too much if it's not really central, as long as it's in that base bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this wire, you've got it hooked on so it shouldn't go anywhere, and then I'm going to pull it and turn the cone and pull it until it comes a little bit more central. So as you can see, I've pulled it and it's pulled it in. As you turn, it sort of goes round and into the middle. It's not perfectly central, but that is now really secure on a piece of wire. Okay, so I've got my cone all wired up, I'm going to next do the fruit. So these pieces of fruit are really easy to wire. So, because I want two, I'm going to do them together. So what you need to do is just poke your wire through the fleshy part of your fruit, like that. And then I'm going to use it through the second one, like that as well. So then just bend your wire down, keeping one nice long bit, because that's the bit that's going to go through your wreath. That bit, just twist the wire like that, so that, make sure there's no spiky bits if you can, so that then I've got two pieces that I can move apart or have them exactly the position I want them in, like that. So if you do that for all of your pieces, and then you can start adding them in. So what I'm going to do is just remove them all, and then if I put in my, in fact, where did I want them? I've moved everything now. So I'm going to put my fruit here, I think. So I've got my wire, I'm going to find the gap and try and give it a poke through. If it doesn't feel like it's going through, it's hitting a stem, so it's never going to go through. So you might just need to move the placement just ever so slightly to find a gap, and you'll feel it go through quite nice and easily. So then you can pull it through, turn it to the position you want, and I'm going to pull it. You don't have to pull it really far, just pull it as far as as deep as you want it to be, and then I'm just going to separate them like that, look, so you can get the vision of the two. I'm going to turn that round. You can see my wire now, I don't know if you can see it with everything being green, is hanging out here. So as before with your wires, it's come through here, you don't want that spiky bit, so you're just going to flip the wire around. You can trim it if you want, but I just leave it like that, and then tuck your end in. Just blend it in nice and flat, if that's what you want. So I don't know if you'll be able to see there, but the wire's in there. You can't see it very well because it's all nice and camouflaged. But there we go, so I've got my fruit in there nicely now. Okay, so, and with your cone, similarly, I'm going to find where I wanted one of these, down here. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to push it through, found a stem there, that's not going to go through there, so I'm going to try again, move it. It is a case of just feeling your way through sometimes, because it can get a bit tricky and your wires can get a little bit bent, so you just might need to pull them out straight and have another go at trying to get through. There we go. So, and pull it through, I'm pulling it through from the back. And I like with the cones, really, if you don't pull them too tight, again, you get more control over where you cone, the positioning of your cone. So for me, I like my cones to also sit in the direction of the circle. So you could have it sat just bolt upright like that, but I kind of like them to be like that, to look like they're embedded in it. So if you don't pull your wire too tight, too far in, or else you lose that capability to be able to move it. So get your positioning really right before you then turn it over and tuck your wire in as you did before. So, like that. There we go, so we've got a couple of pieces on. I'm also going to show you the cinnamon before we go any further, so just bear with me. So, you should have some cinnamon in your pack as well. So, these again, smell so good. So, I sometimes use one, sometimes use two, depending on the sizes of the pieces of cinnamon that you've got. Use a little bit of twine. And tie them together. Even if you're just using one piece, you still need to tie it, because that's how you're going to attach it. So, I'm just going to turn, I'm going to go around once or twice and then tie a little knot. Like that. There we go. So that's now tied together. I'll then trim those ends because you just want them to be nice and neat. Like that, just enough that they're not going to come undone. So there we go, I've got a nice piece of cinnamon there. Again, then with your wire, you just need to thread your wire in underneath where the knot is, because I sometimes think the knot looks nice on the top. is do the same as before, thread it through the string, loop it over and twist it round, like that. There we go. And then I've got my cinnamon on there, so I'm just going to add a piece of cinnamon just to show you what mine looks like. There we go, and again you can twizzle it round, get the positioning that you really want. I mean, the good thing about these is there's so many lovely different scents and smells in these that whenever someone comes to your front door, it's just going to smell amazing. So we've got a piece of cinnamon on, piece of fruit and a pine cone. At the moment it's looking a bit drab, I think, until I fill it all up with all the extras that I want to put on. I will show you though how to do your bows. Some people find this quite tricky to get a nice bow. It sometimes just takes a couple of goes with it to get the perfect bow. So what did I do with the ribbon? Not very well organised, am I? Right. So for this one, I'm going to use this lovely velvet green. What I will do is take a piece of wire again, and that's what you're going to try and tie it onto, because then you can stick it into your wreath. So I'm going to move that out of the way. Whoops, there goes the cone. So you should already have a pre-cut length. I'm going to cut mine, and I've lost my scissors as well. There they are. So I kind of always like a trailer. I always like them to be trailing a little bit. I think it always looks really, really nice when it's a little breeze. So I'm going to work mine out to roughly there. There we go. So I've got my lovely ribbon. I'm going to use the wire. So what I would do is just basically tie yourself a bow, onto the wire. So I'm just going to attach it first, like so. Like that, look. So I've essentially just tied that onto there. Okay, then try and clear that so I can go too dirty. I'm going to then try and finish off the bow. So making my loop, try and make it nice as flat as you can so that you can see that lovely velvet. So that, try and twizzle it because we don't want the bare side. It's probably not great for the camera here, but it just takes a little bit of twizzling. Do you see what I mean? Just to make sure that you are going to get the right side of the ribbon. So this at the moment still looks a little bit messy, but the more you mess with it, the more you play with it and get the right sized bow that you want. I'm going to pull that to make the loops a little bit smaller. And your wire then goes around the back. That's better. And then pull them so that it comes nice and tight. There we go. Like I say, they do take a little bit of fiddling with just to get the perfect bow that you want. That bit's annoying me there. There we go. So I've now got a nice bow on a wire. So like with the others, I would just turn that around and twizzle. So you've just got one piece of wire to thread through. There we go. Try not to crush your bow too much. Ow. Okay, so that's going to take some. You just keep messing with it really until you're really happy with it. And keep trying to tighten it because if it gets too loose. There we go. There we go. So now where you position your bow is obviously totally up to you. I've got my string in mind, so I know exactly where north is. So I'm going to put mine at the top. Sometimes people like to have it at the bottom, have it really nice trailing, that looks really nice. Excuse me. Or, excuse me, sorry. You can have it at the top, at the bottom. Some people like to have it a little bit asymmetrical. Have it on the side here, that always looks nice, I think. But for now, I'm going to put mine right at the top. So I'm just going to make sure, you just need to make sure that you're following where your string is, because if you are trying to get it at the top and you get it just a little bit to the right, it's going to look really weird. So I'm going to find my string, find my wire, thread it through the middle. Again, you have to have a little bit of a fiddle to make sure. And again, don't pull it too far in or else you lose your bow to the inside of your wreath. And obviously the thicker and fuller your wreath is, the more it can get lost. So I'm going to leave mine, I think, out like that. And you can bend your wire to move it as to wherever you want it to go. And then just tuck your end in like you did with all the other bits. And now I'm going to mess with it again because I'm still not happy. There we go. There we go. So now, and I would probably then also trim your other end to make sure that they're equal. But yeah, now we have a wreath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off putting all my bits and pieces onto my wreath so I can show you what it looks like when it's all done. There we go. Right, I think I'm pretty much done with that. I'm pleased with it and I really like the ribbon, so let me show you. There we go. I've got some bits of cinnamon on there. I might actually add a few other extra bits of cinnamon, I quite like them. And the cones and the fruit. But that is going to look gorgeous on my front door. Even if it's a little bit early, because on the moment it's only about the 13th of November. But so, like I say, I mean, you've got all these bits in your box. You don't have to use them. They're just for you if you want to. So if you want a plain wreath, if you want no fruit, or if you don't want any cones, that's fine. I mean, this is your creative project. There's no right or wrong to how you want it to look. So don't feel down on yourself. It doesn't look exactly the same as whoever you're doing it with or whatever. You know, it's up to you to how you want it to look on your door. So get creative, and I really look forward to seeing some of your finished products. Please make sure that if you're making up your wreath, you're taking some pictures of it, please post it on social media and tag in Plume Floristry, because I'd love to see them all. And I'll put them all on my stories so that we can all have a good look at what everyone's made. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and thank you everybody for buying these kits off me. It's the first time I've sold kits and it's been amazing, and the response has been amazing. So I hope you all have enjoyed making them as much as I enjoy making them. And yeah, thank you very much. See you soon.